Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, August 7th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, camp for Ohio State finally starts on Monday. Kicks off on Monday. I'm looking very much forward to it. I'm sure there's a lot of things you're looking forward to in terms of camp. What are maybe one or two things you're looking forward to the most when camp starts?
Well, I'm not going to say the quarterback battle because that's all we're ever talking about, and we're not going to get an answer in camp anyways because Urban's already said we're not going to know who the starter is until we come out on Labor Day and somebody goes out with the team onto the field. So I'm not going to include that in the discussions. I'm really interested to see some of these young receivers. I want to see if McLaurin or Paris Campbell can make a big impact in camp. I'm interested to see what people see and hear about Braxton Miller in terms of returning kicks. I think that's way more exciting right now. We're going to get some answers on that much sooner than we will the actual quarterback battle. I'm also excited to see the young defensive ends. I want to see what Jalen Holmes and Sam Hubbard look like at full-go football again. I mean, the two of them, to me, I think are going to be huge contributors this year. They're young, prototype kind of guys at defensive end, so I'm really excited to see them. And then, of course, the position that not a lot of people talked about just because everything else has been going on, but who's going to be the other starting quarterback opposite Eli Apple? There's so many good candidates here. Hopefully Marshawn Lattimore is going to get healthy and be able to compete as well, but I don't know if that's going to happen. You've got guys like Damon Webb. You've got guys like Garyon Conley. It's going to be really interesting to see out of all this depth that Ohio State has across the board who the new starters are going to be because there's only a couple positions really that are open from last year. Other than that, I really just don't want anybody getting hurt in camp. Is that too much to ask?
That's not too much to ask, and that's always my biggest concern going into camp is making it out. You know, you're not going to make it out unscathed. There's going to be some guys that get hurt, but you don't want any of your, obviously, frontline players to have serious injuries. If the Buckeyes can get through camp without any of their frontline players having serious injuries, to me, that's a win. And we'll see what happens. Now, you brought up the quarterback battle. I have to bring that up. Steve Hellwagon did a story for our site, and he took the pulse of Buckeye Nation, took the pulse of Bucknutters out there, and people submitted their votes, and J.T. Barrett came out ahead 55% to 45% over Cardale Jones. This is interesting, Bax, because I did a poll, not right after the national championship game, maybe a month or two after that I put on Bucknuts, and Cardale Jones was the runaway leader at that time. I can't remember the exact results, but it was like 65% Cardale Jones. Now it's 45% Cardale Jones. J.T. Barrett is now in the lead. What do you make of kind of people changing their minds, so to speak? I mean, because right after the national championship game, it seems like everybody thought Cardale Jones was going to be the starter. Now it seems like most people say J.T. Barrett's going to be the starter. What do you make of that, and do you agree with that?
Well, it was a nod to the debate in Cleveland last night. A 55-45 win in presidential politics is a landslide. So much less a comeback from being down 65-35 for JT. I think the simple truth is that people remember how good J.T. Barrett was when they look back on last season. I think people have had time to sort of let it sink in. Now that they came down a little bit from the high of the ride of the playoff run where Cardale was out of this world. I think people are thinking more along the lines of, now we got to go to Virginia Tech, hostile crowd. You're going to be missing some of the biggest playmakers. Who's the quarterback that's had the experience in an environment like that? That's JT. People talk about now that Braxton's out of the race. Well, who's the better runner of the two? That's JT. Who's the one who's had more experience running the offense? That's JT. Who's the one who's the better distributor of the group? That's JT. Cardale has a lot going for him, not the least of which is a gigantic arm and the fact that he's a gigantic human being. But J.T. Barrett is the prototype for this offense. And the more and more people think about it, and the closer we get to the games and people have to really, make a hard decision if they were the coach, who would they play, more people are going back to J.T. because they remember how effective and just how flat-out excellent he was last year. People forget this is a guy who would have been in New York for the Heisman Finals if he hadn't broken his ankle against Michigan. He's an exceptional quarterback. I've been a JT guy this whole time, I should add, so I'm biased. I think Barrett gives Ohio State the best chance to win this year. And I think that's what a lot of Ohio State fans are circling back around to is we've already won one national title. Let's try to get that second one. And who's the best chance for them this year? In my humble opinion, it's Barrett, and it looks like I'm in the majority right now.
You definitely are, and I think I'm in the minority on this, too. I not only think Cardale Jones is going to start, I think both guys are going to play. And I don't think, by both guys are going to play, I don't mean someone's going to enter in the fourth quarter, make sure they get in the game and mop-up duty. No. That's pretty much the same as flat-out benching somebody. I don't know how you can make the argument to flat-out bench J.T. Barrett. I don't know how you can make the argument to flat-out bench Cardale Jones. But these things have a way of working themselves out. Injuries, even if both guys start playing at the beginning of the year, two-quarterback system, that doesn't mean both guys are still going to be playing by the end of the year. Performance on the field is going to matter. Performance in practice is going to matter. What they're doing off the field is going to matter. Academics and everything else. And, the health. One guy could get hurt. Yeah. So these things have a way of working themselves out. But I think at least to start the season back, we're going to see a two-quarterback system.
Oh, and here's the thing, too, Dave. Last couple of years, how many quarterbacks has Ohio State needed to start? 2, at least. Last year, Cardale was the third stringer. You had Braxton get hurt 2 years ago against San Diego State, and Kenny Guyton, the great Kenny Guyton, had to start a couple games. And then last year, you got JT got hurt after Braxton's shoulder was hurt, too. And I know Cardale's a bigger guy, but there's only so many hits a quarterback can absorb in a season before he gets hurt. And with an offense like Ohio State's where the quarterback run is a gigantic part of it, I think that's going to be an issue that people are going to have to be concerned about. One of these guys could easily get hurt again, and that's just the nature of football. So, yeah, I'm glad we have both of them, and I don't disagree with your notion that they're both going to play at some point. I do think, though, that by both of them playing, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a lot, especially if a game like Virginia Tech is a tight game. At that point, you want somebody who's into the game, gets a little bit of a rhythm against a very good Virginia Tech defense. This would be a way easier argument for us to be having if OSU was opening with Hawaii and then played Virginia Tech week 3 like the original schedule had. I mean, it's a different ballgame right now. And unfortunately, and you can say it's great for OSU that they get the Labor Day night spotlight and it's a huge game and it's all exciting to open the season. But, man, I really wish we had left it week 3 right now because we would have gotten 2 games in with this quarterback battle. We would have gotten these suspensions out of the way against a team OSU would drill regardless. Ohio State made it harder for themselves making Virginia Tech a Labor Day night game, that's for sure. And that's an effect on the quarterback battle now, too, because I don't know if this is a tie. Does that mean J.T. Barrett gets the edge because he's gone into East Lansing and won? Does it mean he has the edge because he's gone into hostile environments before and won? Let's face it, Cardale faced a very friendly crowd in the national title game, a very friendly crowd in Indianapolis last year, and then the Sugar Bowl crowd was pretty split. It wasn't a true road environment by any means. Barrett's the one who's gone into some of these tougher places on the road last year and won. I mean, that Michigan State game sticks out in my mind. The Penn State game last year sticks out in my mind. Those are 2 of the hardest venues in the Big Ten to play at, 2 of the hardest venues in the country to play at, against 2 of the best defenses in the country, and Barrett went in and beat them both. That's something Cardale doesn't have on his resume yet. And now, of course, he hasn't started a lot of games, and if given the opportunity, I'm not saying he can't do it, but it's a completely different ballgame whenever you're doing it on the road in a hostile environment versus a nice neutral site game or a home game.
Final topic here on the show. George Hill has been a Buckeye commitment for a long time, young man out of Hubbard, Ohio. He is the number 8 athlete in the country in the 2016 class. Grew up a Buckeye fan, but unfortunately now he's on decommit watch. It seems like almost about 50-50 chance, and maybe I'm being conservative there, that he's going to flip to Michigan State. This is a surprise to me. Maybe it shouldn't be because they already have L.J. Scott, his former teammate. Looks like he might be the starting running back up there at Michigan State as a true freshman. I know Ohio State has a lot of other good running backs in this class, and now there's talk George Hill could be a safety instead of a running back. What do you make of this? I mean, I just think Michigan State coming in and getting L.J. Scott was one thing because Ohio State did, kind of backed off there. But George Hill, if they're able to flip him, that would obviously be a big loss for Ohio State backs.
Yeah, this would be one of the first times I could say D'Antonio came into Ohio and took a kid that Ohio State really wanted. Of course they want him. George Hill's been a commit for months. And I don't understand it, but I understand it, I guess. Let's face it. If George Hill comes to Ohio State, OSU's talking about playing him as a safety. And there was a big thread on this yesterday when Bill Curlett put up his post about this. And one of the questions that was asked of him was, if George Hill is going to come and play safety at Ohio State, do we like him better than some of the other targets that OSU has up there? Is he really at that level? And that's a fair question. If Meyer and company are looking at it like, try to go Walker and McCall in this class, so Hill maybe really won't play much at tailback when he gets here. Are they going to move him to safety and then all of a sudden instead of a elite athlete, top kind of guy who's going to be a top running back anywhere in college, is he still OSU caliber at safety? That's a question that they have to ask themselves. And I know Michigan State talked to him about playing safety as well, but they'd also give him a chance at tailback. And let's face it, their depth chart at tailback is L.J. Scott, and that's about it right now. So George Hill would get an opportunity to come in and carry the ball a fair amount there, in my humble opinion. But the fact that we're even discussing this shows you how far D'Antonio has come with the Michigan State program. People talk about how you used to have to defend Ohio against that school up north where Harbaugh and company are at. Well, they're not even going to take a single Ohio kid this year in their recruiting class, it looks like. It's a complete different story, and because Michigan State is the team that comes into Ohio and gets a lot of those second-tier kids that Ohio State can't take. But if they come into Ohio and they start taking kids that OSU wants, then D'Antonio's reached a different level of competition with OSU. He was always going to be the guy who develops recruits exceptionally well, took some of the high three-star kids out of Ohio and turned them into very good players who went on to the NFL. If he's able to come in and take kids that OSU is wanting out of Ohio, it's a different story for them. Then you have to really raise your eyebrows and wonder what D'Antonio is building up there and how sustainable it is, because if you're able to take Ohio kids from Ohio State, you're in position to really win a lot of football games. And hopefully hopefully George Hill doesn't decommit, because he hasn't yet. Let's start with that. But if he does, hopefully this is a one-off situation, because if Michigan State can come in and start taking kids away from Ohio State, then it's going to really start to concern me, because when Ohio takes the kids they want and keeps them in Ohio, then Ohio State dominates the Big Ten, and that can't change. And I don't think that will change under Urban Meyer, but anytime you have a situation where you could lose a kid like this to a conference rival, particularly the most successful conference rival, you better have your antenna up and there's an alert going on. And I certainly hope the Buckeyes know full well that the Ohio border is under siege from up north again, just from a different suspect than we usually see.
Great insights, as always, out of the People's Champ. He is Matt Baxendell. I am Dave Biddle. You guys are the listeners. I appreciate you tuning in for the show. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Play that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.